You're listening to the Jam Price Show, all about movies. And today, my guest is award-winning director Reed Harkness, and we're going to be talking about his new documentary entitled Sam Now. Welcome to the show, Reed.
Thank you. Really good to be here.
It's lovely having you here. What an interesting documentary. This has had a long journey from beginning to end. And it started out to be one thing and ended up being something entirely different. How many years? Well, let's tell the audience a little bit about what Sam Now is all about, so they understand what we're talking about when we begin talking about the film.
Sure. Yes. Sam Now is a documentary film that I started 25 years ago. It's a project where I started focusing on my brother, using fiction filmmaking inspired by Michael Apted. I wanted to capture his growth over time, and we're doing little short films as he's growing older. And then in that time, like we're going on these adventures and having all these brotherly bonding moments. Something comes up, something really dramatic happens in our family, and we start talking about it as maybe there's something we could do about this big problem by applying our filmmaking. So what's happened is my stepmom, Sam's mom, it's my half brother, has vanished out of the blue. Nobody knows where she is, and it's remained like that for years, and our family doesn't really have a good solution.
Okay, and we're talking about Sam. This film is about Sam Now. Uh, yeah. I just, I mean, I don't want to give away too many things in this film because it's a film that needs to be discovered, because there's so much into it, but there are so many interesting aspects to it. I do have a question though. I mean, I don't know if I didn't clearly get this out of the film. His mother, you share the same father, and there's how many years between you and Sam?
8 years. I'm his older brother.
Okay. So 8 years. And then she just, beautiful woman who just literally disappears off the face of the planet. Did anybody really try to do anything to find her at that point in time? I mean, there was no note, no anything, right? Correct? When she left?
Yes. Oh, so yeah, there was an effort. The police were contacted, and then what happens in a missing person situation like this is they put a detective, a missing persons detective on the case in Seattle, and in an amount of time, that detective got back to our family, and what I heard was they had found her, and she's not being held against her will, and she doesn't want to talk to any of you. So that left our family in a big conundrum.
Right.
And during the years that she was gone, um, our other brother Jared gets really depressed. Sam's kind of taking the other path to processing this by avoiding it altogether. And I became the person in the family that was like, hey, we need to do something about this. And and what we ended up doing is Sam and I decided to go on a road trip to look for her.
And that is amazing. And it was detective work for you to discover where she might be. So let's talk a bit about that process. I mean, not only were you the filmmaker on this, you were also a detective, and quite the adventure, a 2,000-mile trip with the two of you to locate his mother. So let's talk a little bit about that journey and how you did eventually locate her.
Sure. So right off the bat, when we decide to do this as a film, I start interviewing everyone in our family to get clues or information as to where she might be. And, I discovered two things. One, like, even though it seems like nobody's like taking any action or doing anything about this, like everybody's emotional about it. And they're having closed door conversations that don't involve me or my brothers. And so when I kind of open the door, it starts like I start realizing like how everybody's really distraught over this. Um, and then the other bit is it's like nobody knows a thing about where she is. Like then something does surface, like one random person that might happen to know where she is surfaces, and it's like this professor at a university somewhere. And we're like, okay, let's go and try to meet them on their office hours. Like that's our best shot. We just got to like go meet them face to face, and like they won't turn us away.
And
And so yeah, we go on this road trip. It's like
yeah, I
we're
don't
out
know how
for.
much you want to tell and how much
I
you
was like, I'll tell the whole movie. No,
okay.
yeah, we go on this road trip, and you know, right, I'm driving, I'm the driver. Sam doesn't even have a license. We're going on this trip, um,
And how old is
and I
Sam?
start to,
How old is Sam at this point?
I think he's 16 on the road trip,
Okay.
and I
And she
pretty
at
quickly
that, excuse me for interrupting, but and at that point, how long had she been gone?
about 3 years.
Okay, go on.
So we're on this road trip, and I'm starting to realize the pressure and what I've taken on. Okay, I I love the idea of going on an adventure with my brother, a road trip. Yes, all that thing is like great, but like here we are, and what if Sam breaks down? What if we don't find anything, and it's just we're just left with this like, you know, sad attempt. And then, a lot of other things start coming up, like along the way, I talked to Joyce's adoptive family, and I start to learn a little bit about like what her home life was like. And my mom, Chayo, lives in the Bay Area, and so we stop in on her, and it was total clash up against these sort of ideas of like what motherhood is. And basically that's when all the revelations start.
Right, right. Yeah, that's a whole nother topic. What is motherhood? So we can get into a whole lot around that also. Um, what I found interesting that, and I hope I'm not again saying too much, is that when you do locate her, but that's we can go into that deeper if you want to. She had no remorse. She didn't really, she had wreaked havoc on her two children, her two sons, and their lives were traumatically affected by this for the rest of their lives. And we'll get into that a little deeper too. But she didn't seem to have any remorse. It was like, no, I had to do this for me. And it was just very um, selfish, self-contained. I don't know what word you probably have a better word for it than I do because you lived it. How did you feel about that?
On one hand, I grew up, you know, in a house with her, and part time. I would go between California and Seattle, and knew her really intimately, and like had gotten used to her personality and who she was, and was somebody that was like, she's a mom to me as well as Sam. She like have so many like great memories of experiences in the summer. She would be the mom that would like get out a whole tray of water balloons for your friends to just start a water balloon fight. She was a really fun stepmom for me. And then you know in this movie in real time, once we reconnect with her, I'm starting to pick up on things I hadn't noticed before. And I'm really taken aback by the things that you are, which is, okay, she seems really grateful that that there's a reconnection, a reunification with her kids. But she doesn't want to own up to what's happened, what she's done, her actions. it's like a wall. It's like she's not it's not something that computes or is something that she's willing to even entertain. So that makes me really curious, and I dive even deeper into like trying to understand like how could anyone leave their kids in that way. Um I think one way to think about things is that we can never truly relate to another person. Like we can never know what another person's life experience is. And you know, with my stepmom, I think we've got these patterns of generational trauma that exist. She was a baby right after World War II in Japan, and she was orphaned, and she was um, adopted into a family that is really it seemed like she didn't feel any connection with them. That I think that when these things happen, we start to see patterns that um, are really confusing. It's really hard to like wrap your head around, and I have leaned in really far to just sort of to try to get it. And I think that the best way I can understand it is like, hey, let's say that my mom, you know, couldn't handle me, at 18 months old, and like was like, okay, I'm out. And then I was adopted into a family at 18 months, and there wasn't a connection there, and there wasn't a lot of compassion there. What would I end up like? What would my defense mechanisms start to look like?
Right. Yeah. And I think sometimes we detach to protect ourselves, from being hurt. And perhaps that was one of her mechanisms, because that's certainly what manifested later in her life, that she just detached. Is
We all
my
do that, right? Like we all do that in little ways.
Yeah, we
And
do.
there's so many, and so it's an investigation not into just this one big detachment, but how my family detaches from the situation being a sort of like stain on the family, and a bit of pain that like we're all wrestling with, but like nobody really wants to deal with. And then Sam begins to detach from his emotions, and we see how that plays out over years. um yeah, all those things are intertwined.
They all are. And so you started out this movie being one thing, and I love all of your technique, all the things you used. It was just fun. No, it's a fun movie to watch. I know the topic seems rather heavy as we're speaking about it, but the reality is it's a really fun movie in the way that you filmed it. A lot of the techniques that you saw, it's like the early Beatles movies like Help. You were doing a lot of those fun things throughout this movie, and I do want to talk about the Blue Panther. So, because we'll go back to this, but let's go talk about the Blue Panther and how the Blue Panther came about, and all of that, because that's fun. It makes this movie a lot of fun, even though the topic can be rather heavy. The way that you, as I said earlier, the way you presented it and filmed it is in a light way in many ways, so you can deal with both the heavy and the light together.
And that's exactly how we did. We're dealing with the heavy things through filmmaking and through, the sort of the fun and the adventure of our filmmaking. Yeah, the Blue Panther. Okay, so the Blue Panther, like the real backstory of the Blue Panther is one day we're kids, we're goofing around in our living room, and Sam disappears. It's me and Jared, and it's just like, where'd Sam go? And then all of a sudden, he just jumps out wearing this costume. He's put on this wrestling mask that he got in Mexico, and he's got a shorty wetsuit on, and he's just like, I'm the Blue Panther, and he starts wrestling with us. It's a very simple story. It happens all the time in families.
Right.
In this case, we don't talk about Sam going to find his mom. We talk about, what if the Blue Panther goes to find his mom.
Right.
And to that, Sam says, yeah, because I think that's our code, like that's a like insider sort of language for like, could we do this through kind of our playful experience, our like, hey, we're gonna like channel the same energy that we put into goofing around and having fun to this thing that's like impossible to even get a word out about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you do have fun with it. You just started filming. I mean, this how many? I mean, this is 25 years of this making this movie, or started filming it, for 25 years, which reminds me a lot of the movie by Richard Linklater, Boyhood. When I was, watching it, obviously that there's lots of interesting similarities in so many ways. But that film was 12 years. They filmed it over 12 years, so, but with actors, instead of real life human beings going through all of these issues. When you started it, did you have any idea that this was going to be a 25-year project? And if you did think about it at that point, would you have done it?
No, I didn't think about that. I did want to do something long term, but to me, long term was like, something different. It was a different number than 25 years. Um, and yeah, Linklater's a huge hero to me. So tell him to watch the movie. But
Yes.
the experience of like, this sort of unraveling of different layers where, different stages in time, how that all came about was like, as a teenager, I got to see one of the Up movies at a art house cinema in Seattle, and at the time I wasn't interested in documentaries, but I was like, that's a really interesting way to do a documentary. And then I sort of applied the same logic to this like film series I was doing with my brother, where it's like, okay, we're gonna make these little films, and you will see what happens. You'll grow older in them, and we'll kind of work with where you're at in development, and then and so that was a little bit more like my really like basic kind of like boyhood concept, like back then,
Mhm.
in the late 90s. But then things keep evolving in the story. At a point, it's like when we're actually going on the trip to find Joyce, it's more like I'm recording this for record, but I'm not a filmmaker anymore. No, no, no. This is deeper than that. And I just have to record it for record now because I don't know what's happening here.
Mm-hmm.
And then down the road, as things keep happening, I'm like, I take more ownership, and I'm like, I need to make this as a movie because there's things here that I still don't understand, and I think it could also be helpful to other people. Does that
Right.
make sense? I kind of
Yeah.
get to these big questions, and it's just like, now it's time for me to really do this and own this story, and I also did lots of time where I give people lots of space, like, subjects in the film, for whatever reason, it made more sense to like step back. And so that also added to this sort of patient long-term filmmaking process, like step back, wait until things happen. If you were writing the movie Star Wars or something, like it seems like the movie, and as you're watching it, like happens in like what, like a week or something. I would imagine that like the true like lifespan of those characters in the first movie is like many years, that kind of stuff. I don't think truly happens in that short of time.
So at what point did you know it was time to stop filming and to start editing this and making it a
Mm,
documentary?
great question. Producer and collaborator Jason Reed, and editor too, came on board around 2015, and um, he was a real big motivator to like, okay, well, like let's really look at this. There had been no cuts of the film until then, and I had amassed a huge archive.
Yeah.
Gosh, I don't even know, like there was this, but like I was really at that point, I was really ready to, I was going into a phase where I was really ready to sink in. I did a lot of shooting around that time and really started to get to this place in my brain as a director where I was like, okay, I see this. I see what this story is. I didn't see the story, I didn't fully, it wasn't fully realized, but I started to see like how it would all be. And that was really exciting. And then it was like a 3 year, you know, the last 3 years were like full time editing with like two editors, Jason Reed and Darren Lund.
Mm.
Our editors just like fantastic. They were just like burning and burning and burning and cranking out so many edits and versions of scenes that all necessary to realizing the final form, which to me feels like it's just like the biggest jigsaw puzzle you could possibly imagine, and the only way it works is if that last piece like fits. It has to fit. It doesn't work any other way. So this is the cut. There's gonna be no other version of it, and it's right. It's right on.
Yeah. I was going to ask you how many years now, 3 years with several editors working on it. Oh my gosh, I mean, how many hours of footage did you have?
Yeah, we don't actually know, strangely, and this is a number we should know, but like there's something like, okay, so many different formats too, because it's like VHS timeline and Super 8 timeline. There's like all these different timelines, and I think like there's like ridiculous amount of just like the Super 8 film is like days long. It's like you would be watching that for days on Super 8. Like how much money is that? That's ridiculous. Um, so yeah, it's it's a piece of long-term filmmaking that is like a collage of, it's like diving into an interesting scrapbook of filmmaking. And not just that, but it's a really compelling narrative film about family and loss and relationships and motherhood and generational trauma.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it really is. It's got all of the aspects in there for sure. I know it started off being one thing, and then I'm sure it evolved. I mean, obviously, who knows what it kept evolving as time went on, I'm sure. But then what really getting into, I want to talk about adverse childhood experiences, which are ACEs, you said. Because it goes into why you feel that this movie is a movie that everyone should see. In the research, it says that 1 in 3 people experiences an adverse childhood experience. So that's, I mean, and how this affects us. And we don't have too much longer to go, Reed, but can you talk a little bit about that and why you feel that this film is more to help people who have gone through some of these kinds of experiences?
Yeah, this has been one of the most amazing things about releasing the movie and seeing it with audiences is like we've we've witnessed like these great like reactions of you know people having similar experiences, and I think that this is something that is just it's not talked about enough. Clearly, we those numbers, the ACE study score stuff is like all to do with like, hey, in our families, in our own lives, there's trauma, and it's trauma's not something just for like other people. No, it's in everybody's lives. And knowing that, I think frees us up a little bit to talk about it and to get some of that stuff off of our chest. It doesn't help, as shown in the movie, if you just sort of like tuck it away, push it away. It's not you're not going to help anyone. It needs to get out. So um yeah, the ACE stuff too was really inspiring. Dr. Burke Harris, was really getting the word out around the time that I was beginning editing around the Aces stuff. And she just really like hit the nail on the head, was just like, this is okay, not just are those like, not just is it true that you know, 1 in 3 of us have these ACE scores, but that stuff, those adverse childhood experiences, like, will tell like if you'll have like, you know, shorter lifespan, you know, heart disease, if you're, you know, do prison time, like what happens in your childhood,
Right.
all that, like if you don't deal with it, if you don't like metabolize it and like process it,
It'll affect you.
it
Yeah.
yeah. And it's like,
Underlying. Yeah.
okay,
It's
so
underlying that. I'm so sorry. I wish we could talk some more, but our time is up. And it's that underlying, subconscious that, all for everyone that can change what we do and how we respond and how we act. But thank you. Oh, I'm so sorry we can't talk more because it's a really fascinating film. Before we go, though, can you please tell us where people can see Sam now?
absolutely. Thank you so much. So yeah, we're showing theatrically, we're opening this week. Tomorrow, April 6th, in at Lemley, Glendale. And then the next day, the 7th, in New York. We'll be doing long runs there, and then, you know, nationally. But we are also going to be on PBS, Independent Lens, starting May 8th. So please come out. I'll be at a bunch of these screenings, and I hope to see you there.
Yeah, wonderful. I wish you much success with Sam now. Thank you, Reed, so much for being on the show. And everyone, seek it out, especially watch it on PBS when it comes on. So thank you so much.
Thank you.